Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the Pathfinder role-playing game system. Well, where we left off, we were talking about creating magic items. Today, I'm going to continue with that, with talking about making magic weapons to begin with. So a magic weapon, much like magic armor, you need heat, you're going to need the right tools, either metalworking tools, leatherworking tools, or woodworking tools. Of course, you're going to need supplies. This supplies will take the form of both the material that you need, equivalent to half the base price of the item, but also you're going to require the weapon itself, which this weapon that you're going to be required has to be of masterwork quality. This price of the masterwork quality weapon is added to the market value from the base price, so it will be an extra added to the market value. Now, a special prerequisite of creating magic weapons, similar to magic armor, is that you need to have a caster level of 3 times the enhancement bonus of the magic weapon. Now, if you're using enhancement bonus and special abilities, you'll have to compare the caster levels of each of these, and whichever caster level would be higher is the total caster level you actually need. So if your special ability has a higher caster level than 3 times the enhancement bonus you're trying to have on the magic weapon, then it's the caster level of the special ability that you're going to have to look at. Otherwise, enhancement bonus caster level. And it is important to note, of course, you still need at least a +1 enhancement to have any special abilities on your weapon. Now, in order to create this, any spells that are required, any spells that are prerequisite, you need to either have them prepared, or if you're a knowledge-based class, have them known and ready to be able to be cast. Regardless, you will not need any focuses or material components that are related to these spells. What you will be doing is, once you are creating the item, each time you are working on the item, you effectively use up that spell slot. Whether it's a slot that you know for a known spell, or it's one that you had, of course, prepared ahead of time, you use up that spell effectively. It's still there, but you've used the energies of it, and until you take a full rest, you cannot use that spell/slot again. It is also important to note that if you're using a weapon that's a double weapon, you have to do work on each end of the weapon separately. Each one is almost its own magic weapon, own magic item that you're developing. So you will have to take twice the resources, twice the time, double anything else that is required for creating this magic weapon. There's the possibility of other prerequisites existing, but you're going to have to reference the description of any kind of specific or specialized magic weapon in order to understand what those prerequisites are. Okay, let's move on from magic weapons. Let's talk about potions. For potions, you're going to need some kind of flat table or area to work with, a number of things, jars and containers for mixing stuff, and some kind of heat source to brew the potion itself. All these ingredients must be purchased as part of the, of course, base price cost. The cost is 25 gold pieces times the spell level, the spell you're trying to brew into potion, times your caster level, whatever caster level you're actually using. And the materials must be fresh and unused. Now, the person that imbibes the potion is both the caster then and the target of the spell. There is a reason behind this, because it means that you cannot use a spell of range personal to a potion. You cannot put it into there. It has to have some other kind of range than personal. Now, you have to have had the spell prepared, similar to what the magic weapon. Either I have to have it prepared ahead of time, or I have to know it, the one that I'm putting into the potion. Once I begin working on the potion, I will be viewing that magic into there, basically giving up that slot/prepared spell. I will have to have all the materials and the focus needed for this potion prepared ahead of time. The materials will be consumed, the focus will be not consumed, meaning that you could theoretically reuse this focus again for another potion. It takes about a day to brew a potion. So let's move on and let's talk about magic rings. Magic rings, you are going to require a number of materials, which will of course include the ring itself that you're going to be enchanting, putting magic upon. The value of the materials that you're going to have to create, of course, is about half the base price. Though you're going to have to look specifically at whatever type of ring you're looking at, or at the specific chart to figure out how exactly much it will cost you. Varies from ring to ring, and it can have various things that will change the price value. So this is a little bit more complex on this side. It is very important to note that if your ring basically duplicates the effects of a spell that has a material cost to it, you will have to bring in a cost of materials equal to 50 times that material cost. So if it's got a 10 gold piece material cost to it, I will need, of course, 500 gold pieces worth of this material. If the ring itself has a prerequisite that is of a costly material, that spell, you don't automatically need to pay that cost. Remember what I just said there. If it duplicates that effect, just because it has a cost value to one of the spells that's a prerequisite to this ring, doesn't mean I actually have to pay that cost. Doesn't mean I have to do that 50 times cost. Only if it's actually recreating that spell effect. If its spell is just adding into the overall prerequisites, no, you're fine. Once again, you must have the spells prepared. You will trigger and use them as you develop the magic item. It is important to note that you should really look at the description of various magic items because it will give you an idea if it has any other prerequisites other than the basic ones which we've discussed here, which some magic rings do have. Now let's talk about creating a rod. Creating a rod, of course, you need the proper materials, including the rod itself that you're going to enchant. Now, pricing a rod can be difficult also, because rods, much more different than rings. Rings, at least you have a general idea of when to work with. Rods, they can be so out there and different from each other that pricing out a rod can be incredibly difficult if you're not recreating a specific rod that's already in existence. In that case, of course, you can find out what its base price is and get that half price to see what kind of materials you need. Otherwise, it can be a challenge, and you might have to work along with your game master to figure out what it is. Like before, you do have to have the proper spell prepared, and you will be using it as part of basically creating this rod, basically casting it. It is important to note that for this one, you do not need the materials and you do not need the focus in order to create the rod of any of the spells that you are using as a prerequisite. So those spells that you've prepared that you're using into this rod, using up, don't need those. And other prerequisites might be listed under the rod's descriptions that you might require. Now let's talk about making a scroll. A scroll will require proper writing implements, inks, papers, places to work. You're going to need these as the base requirements. You also need an amount of material equal to 12.5 gold pieces times the spell level of the spell that you're putting onto a scroll times the caster level of you or the caster level that you're using to put it into the scroll. And the materials you're getting need to be fresh and unused. It is also important that just like with potion, now you will have to, of course, prepare the spell ahead of time. You'll have to have the focus and materials of that spell that you're putting into scroll form. The materials will be used up, the focus will not be. The spell will be effectively expended, like before, when you're putting it into scroll format. You can get about 1,000 gold pieces worth of work on a scroll done per day. As with most magic items, it's the 1,000 gold piece. But for scrolls, since they are unique and they can have more than one spell on them, it is important to note that you can only put one spell at a time on a scroll. Which means, if I'm spending a number of days putting the spell into this scroll, once I finally finish up putting the spell into there, I have to wait till the next day to start putting in the next spell. But then I could start putting more spells into this scroll and have multiple spells in said single scroll. But that's it for today. I finished up some magic item discussion. Now I went over, of course, magic weapons and the basic rules, which are very similar to magic armor. I did also talk about rings and rods, which are a little more complex, but are items that you can create that are very useful. All of these, well, most of these, require about 1,000 gold pieces worth of work per day that you make. That's about how long it will take you to create these. In the next episode, we'll hopefully finish up talking about all the other types of magic items you can create and start moving into the end of the book with some appendices information. We'll see if we can finally get to that today. Bye. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. There's some great rewards there. It helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.